Chapter 7, Casually Discarded. I open my eyes and guess that I'm awake. The forest sky's red with yellow-white star speckles still shining through. How I've missed this red. How I've missed this whole continuum for that matter. At least I have color here. It's startling how quickly you can lose focus on what's important in life. The fog is faster moving than usual, and even the fireflies don't dare venture through the mist. I wade through the dark to the hollow of the tiny place. Here in the mire I see other tracks. Most are small, winding to and fro, birds and rabbits presumably. A few sets were much larger, my-sized and with a similar gait, walking right up to the door. At the landing, where the mud is only inches thick, I can distinctly see several different shoe prints. Most were very similar to mine, X's and weaving shapes, but one set was very different. There were no shoes, only split hooves. What's happening here? Animal sacrifice? Why are all these people in my head? I burst through the door, feigning ready for anything. The chasm is filled solid with gray smoke, and it rushes past me into the low pressure outside. My fire is still extinguished, but all my furnishings are still more or less in place. I start to look for matches to rekindle my flame, but instead decide to sit a while. I came here to think about it, not to play groundskeeper. Behind me is a straining sound, high pitch and quick to decay, like a floorboard creak. I hold my breath and peer further into the darkness. Then I remember that's probably bad for my eyes and stop, in favor of listening in. I can hear my pulse, and the thin wood door shivering on its hinges. I can hear little mouse feet scampering, and the pitter-patter of slight drizzle. No one's home, I guess. I decide to stand up and check the second floor for intruders despite this. The damp wood gives to my weight as I creep up the spiral stairs. At the landing of the second floor is a fairly long and narrow hall, lined with several doors. All the doors are closed, aside for the far one on the right. As I slide up to the jamb, I try to use the reflection off the frame of one of my many collector's art pieces to peer into the room. It was a landscape painting with a very small structure done in a proto-post-contempo minimalist sort of styling. There are plants and mountains with a tiny shack seeping up from the tall grass, all held within borders of white with periodic blue lines. The medium is crayon on notebook paper, which is somewhat of a motif to my collection. There is a small label on the work, a thin brass placard that reads, Saul Robertson, 2017, age 5, home. The dark inside this dwelling was so dense that no reflection could be trusted, especially with that ghostly white shape that raises up from time to time. I should just go and get it over with and turn the corner. I do, and to my surprise, no one. Just an open window with a piece of fabric blowing out. The window faces out over the water, just past where I always arrive at this place. From up here, you could see the fog pouring through the trees and flowing like water. I close the window, and all the little paper fragments in the room come to rest from their flickering, like fluttering bird wings, just waiting to fly free from this world of my thought. I poke around the shoddy possessions of this room, mostly scraps and notes with some old clothes and blankets hung up. There are old photo albums out here, candid and blurry snapshots from crude phone cameras, pixelated from compression during the printing phase. The cheap inks are starting to degrade, and I'm sure the open window wasn't helping much, letting the ever-precipitous ambience bleed in. Even though film was on the fringe by the time I was born, my pop still liked printing them. It had become a mutual hobby for us, and we'd compare what we took. Even though he may have only done it just so he could spend a little more time with me. My pictures, especially then, were horrendous. I couldn't understand it all. The exposures and focal lengths, it was just too much. I couldn't capture anything right. Well, not in the traditional sense. Later, in college, when I learned that some people liked some kinds of blurs, I realized I was kind of alright. Instead of photographing a subject for its realism, you can capture just the tone of it, the calm and the chaos. I start thumbing through one of these family photo albums for old time's sakes. The first few pages are populated by people I don't know. Unfamiliar faces, although presumably, probably quite familial. Older cousins and in-laws who either divorced or became bald or moved away. I recognize the wallpaper and some of the furnishings, which might very well be down the hall in another adjacent room. Then, pictures of all the young children, which are also really hard to recognize. It's not like I was looking into a mirror lot then, and with all the braces and glasses and fashion statements to come, it's hard to figure out who was who without the who wears what. I'm starting to recognize my immediate family and self more and more. I find a picture out of place, which is frighteningly common on these upper floors. It's from my teenage years in the late 20s. I'm alone in my room, hunched over my desk. My hair was dark and unkempt, floor cluttered with bits and pieces of project parts, amplifiers and hand tools stacked on my dresser. In this frame, I'm shining an array of different spectra lasers through some mineral I stumbled across, with probes monitoring the mineral itself, trying to measure anything I could sense. I knew so little of resonance then, of light. As I'd look more deeply at myself, or rather, at myself a decade or so ago, I notice a glint to my face. I bring the picture closer to my eyes, and yes, there is something, an extra gloss. I pace over to the window to get more light on it, and I could see it now. My eyes are blue. Maybe it's just the diffuse nature of moonlight. No, I know my colors. No, they're blue here. I drop the photograph onto the floor in dismay, amongst all the other bits and pieces of my life that were also just dropped. Carried through for so long, only to be casually discarded, left like the rest of them, to slip away through the floorboards. I amble back downstairs in the quiet dark and take up occupancy on my chair. I rest my eyes. I lean back and prop my feet up. The dead fire still had embers brewing beneath the gray ash, and it was nice on my feet. I wrap myself in the blanket my parents used to use, and the warmth lulls to me. Okay, I have to figure this out. What do I remember? I work with film somewhere where you need a key card. I won Cassandra back over the last time I lost time. I was at work when I lost time last. What was I working on? I got it. I don't take the pictures. I develop them. No, that's dumb. Who would employ me to look at pictures all damn day? I look at my abode and consider that I prefer to exist in dream states, and then reconsider why anyone would employ me anyway, regardless of my skills. I feel like Oscar, that kid who grew up down the block from me. He was homeschooled. My parents thought he was slow. He was the only other kid on the block, so to me he was just a friend. Even though most of our time together was merely trying to figure out what the other was saying, to which the confusion was surely mutual. One day our neighbor was throwing out a piano, probably in favor of some modular synthesizer or something lavish, so we decided to hammer away on it. I couldn't tell it was out of pitch, but Oscar couldn't leave it alone. He ended up coming back that night and tuning the strings with a flashlight. He could just hear it. I'm pretty sure he ended up restoring pianos at some sophisticated repository of fine olden instruments. Like Oscar, I just gotta sit around until I figure out what I'm good at. It'll come to me. I wonder where he is now anyway, after I left home and he didn't that long time ago. It's funny what sort of permanence doing something once can have. How you only have to get in the car one more time and be gone, never to be heard from again, moved or deceased. Tattoos, or two lonely people sitting by their telephones in a stoic stalemate, just hoping the other will be big enough to call first. The flick of a light switch in a dark room can erase an eon of lives from the record of film. Shredded love letters that you could have put back together, but the beauty of the words would have been marred by your moment of wrath and weakness. And even though it's what you wanted to do more than anything, it's not what you actually do. Along all of my books are burned handprints, which had eaten away the jacketing and blackened the pages. The hands are becoming elongated and narrower now, not really resembling my hands much at all. I have to catch it, this monster in the act. It knows my thoughts and my ways, and I know so little of it. I have to confront it. I think he saw the picture, the green eyes say. Of course he saw it, we led him right up to it, says Brown. I'm still surprised anytime he gets a hint. Well, not everyone here is married to discord, Paul. Blue Eyes sneers. Hey, what's that gotta do with anything? Yeah, lay off them, to each their own, right? The Blue Eyes glance left and right. They close for a second, and there's a low sigh followed by a throat clearing. I'm sorry, you're right. I'll try to leave the wives out of this. I realize you two don't have an obligation to help me, and I apologize. But you have to see what this means to me. My life and my love. Let's keep up on it, and I'll try to be more patient with the plan, okay? And in that same silent agreement, Blue Eyes thinks to itself that even though that's what it had decided to say, that it wasn't what it had wanted to say, what it had meant to say.